Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Natalia Nakazawa and we're here with Susan Silas, one of our new members. Well, not so new anymore, but fresh
Sort
members.
of new.
Still new. And this is part of the ongoing series, Lunchtime Studio Visits with myself and various members throughout the building. And it's a way for us to kind of get a glimpse into people's practices as they've been continuously changing throughout, especially the pandemic. But just in general, what's up with their practices. So thank you for joining us, Susan. I'm excited to have you.
Well, thanks for
spend some time
inviting
with
me
you.
to do this. I thought it would be nice to start, for people who are actually in the building that I haven't met. I'm in Studio 901 and happy to meet people eventually when things are more normal. When I got into the studio, I ended up making this series of works that are made with a thermal camera. So they're very much about the body, which feels like something a lot of people have focused on during COVID because they're so much alone with themselves. So it seems like a very natural, reflective thing. But in my case, I've been working in and around the subject of embodiment for over 2 decades. So it's also a natural continuation of what I've been doing. And what I set up in the studio was a set of pedestals. They're, kind of small, they're about 1 foot high. And I basically performed in relationship to these pedestals at different heights and in different configurations. And I definitely, in my mind, was thinking a lot about the work of Bruce Nauman early in his career, where he would just prance around in his studio, recording himself walking in a square or a circle, and also thinking about the sculptures that Charles Ray made very early on, where he used his body in those ways, and Valley Export, who also did a lot of images of herself juxtaposed against and kind of pressed up against different kinds of hard structures, essentially.
Right.
So this is, these are stills from the video, and the video basically just sees heat. I'm the camera. So what you're seeing, obviously my hair is colder than my body, and it understands that. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to show you a very short excerpt of one of the videos too, so you get an idea what that's like.
Yeah, fantastic. And I remember you had one with a carpet that was better at absorbing heat.
Yes.
And left these sort of trails, which was also really interesting to think about how you can control the form based on the different kinds of materials that you're using.
And even here, if I'm on the pedestal long enough, it will leave a trace of my body heat. But the carpet, which was done in my home, was really a surprise because it retained the heat for a long time and the imprint of where I had just been lying. So that was kind of a surprise. But even here, if you look at the pedestal, you can see remnants of temperature that it's picking up. This set was done in a slightly different way in that there are 2 pedestals, one a shorter one on the left and then a taller one on the right. And so I'm kind of maneuvering myself between 2 different forms.
How do you see this in relation to a performance too? And this, I'm just thinking about like durational performance, or do you see them as more like photographs or?
No, I actually see it as performance for the camera. Whoops, I'm going to stop here and show you an excerpt just for a second of this while we're talking.
Live as photo, like when you, let's say someone was like, I'd like to include this work, like how do you, is it?
I would show it as video, is what you're about to see here.
Okay, great.
It would be shown as video and hopefully as a video installation.
Okay,
this little, let's get this guy out of the way.
Yeah, maybe full screen this one.
I think this is his, let's see. There we go.
There.
So, Yeah, I see this and my work, Lita and the Swan, both as being performance, but perform for the camera.
Mm,
Like I would not see myself as somebody who performed live, although I've been asked about that.
yeah.
But I
I would
definitely
agree.
see it as performance
Mhm.
and in relationship to other performance work. So again, here it's about kind of juxtaposing myself between, the fluidness of the body and the heat of the body juxtaposed against something that is unforgiving and is not going to move or bend. These other rigid surfaces. Oops. Let me see.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then can you talk a little bit about the resolution? Because I remember that you sort of were thoughtful, or at least, considered the type, like what the camera was actually built for or made.
Right. So there are very expensive military grade versions of thermal cameras, but
Right.
this one happens to be a very inexpensive camera. It's used basically by electricians and plumbers, looking for fuses and various kinds of things. And so it's pretty primitive. And this, believe it or not, is one of the higher resolution cameras they make in this genre. And it's only 648 by or 640 by 480 or something, very low resolution. And I've output them as a higher resolution for projection, but they're very funky, as you can see. It's really a low resolution, in an odd way, very low tech functioning thing. So this is kind of what it does.
Right. And did you, I mean, it like lends itself to a very particular aesthetic, which I think is working, but did you have to kind of try out a couple of different cameras, or were you immediately like, I think that the sort of most accessible camera is what that kind of aesthetic is what I'm going for?
I came to it totally naively. Like I didn't know what I was going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I have thought about whether I would want to experiment at some point with something that was much more high resolution. I haven't dismissed that as a possibility, certainly. But one of the things that I've liked about this is that it sort of looks like painting to me at this
Right.
also.
Yeah.
That there's some way in which, especially the still images have, it's funny, they always make me think of Kathleen Bradford. I don't know if she would like that very much, but they do. And I actually happen to be very fond of her paintings. But there's something about the way it represents the body that feels painterly to me.
Yeah. Well, also,
And
when you're thinking about Bruce Nauman and you're thinking about that sort of like night camera, or like what's accessible or available in like a studio, it has a very particular conversation in the sense of what tools are available for that kind of trade almost.
right, it's a
Like
very working class.
work, yeah, like what's available to just the general public.
Now, it doesn't mean that I won't ever try to work with a higher resolution camera. I think a lot of those work in a sort of infrared, they're more black and white,
Mm-hmm.
and they render things in a much more tight way that feels more like photography, whereas to me this feels a little bit like some blend of painting and photography.
Yes.
Or video in any case, and harkens back to the less high resolution old videos. They weren't so high resolution either. They didn't look so great. When you look back on them, they're kind of funky, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all part of it. And then I was going to move on to showing you one other video. This you took very sweetly for me.
My excellent photography skills.
This is about, let's see if we can make this big just to block everything else out. This is a model, right, for a sculpture, but it is also what the figure, you can see it in the background here, my avatar, that I based a motion capture video on. So it's actually has a life as a physical object and also as a video. That's basically me giving a eulogy for myself as though I were no longer on the planet. Let's go back to this here. So here you see it installed at the FA, which was wonderful, with another image called Aging Venus. And while this was up, and in the last couple of months, I've been working with a foundry in Philadelphia to turn this model into a larger than life bronze sculpture. And that process is now nearly done. So this is a CNC model, right, of the same model you saw in the smaller version, just basically larger, right? And then you see the next step, which is them having created a wax,
Yeah.
right, for it.
So the CNC model, is that milled out of, what material is that?
It's some kind of super hard foam.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
here we see it again. This is all at the foundry at a different angle. So, you know, you see the relationship. The wax is like a teeny bit smaller, I guess, than the other, although you can't really tell. This is a, you know, proposal for how this thing might be viewed on a pedestal. So this is like a 3D model of its future.
but it's larger than life. So what's...
So this is now at the foundry, it almost finished. So it's 24 inches high.
Wow.
So the distance from the top of the forehead to the chin is about 10 inches, which is a couple of inches, you know, maybe 3 inches more than my actual face.
Right. So it's probably like a 1/3 increase or something.
Something like that. 25%, 30%. Yeah. This is it from the back.
Ooh.
And these are details of the sides. So this has been kind of an exciting, you know, change. Oops, we'll talk about that next thing in a sec. And I'm really thrilled about it. You know, it's really fun to see it as this object in space.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, for it to have this other life as this video, which I can show you just a quick excerpt of, and then I'll show you the last few images here.
Great. I'm excited about
I should have done this ahead of time, obviously. I should have queued this up. I apologize to everybody. So this is the first of what is now a series of 4 motion capture videos.
And then I think maybe if you could just talk a little bit about the concept of eulogy, or, you know.
Ooh. You would mourn them. I don't know what happened here, sorry. When she's gone. More importantly, I can't seem to get rid of this mail window. I don't know why this happened.
Yes. Yeah.
She was worried about her legacy.
Oh, here we go.
She wanted to be famous. Isn't that what all
artists wanted? This video evolved both out of my interest in the various ways that you can express something once you have an object file of it, right? Which it can become a photograph. It can become a video. It can become that sculpture. They all come from the same original file. But this was also, I guess it's a little hard to, I'll mute it for a minute.
Yeah.
People can see this on my website very easily. It also was inspired originally by 2 things. One was giving a eulogy for my mother and then starting to fantasize about what it would sound like if someone gave a eulogy for me. And then taking that a step further and thinking much more about the people who are interested, mostly men, in uploading our minds to computers, what that means about our body, again, talking about embodiment, but this case in the guise of disembodiment, right? And their belief that this is so easily, incredibly possible. And I find it very interesting that most of the focus and most of the people working on this are men.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it speaks to a certain kind of detachment and disembodiment that they already live in their day-to-day lives in relation to their own bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was where it ended up after the initial musings about what it would sound like if somebody was standing there giving a eulogy for me. And it's much more about a eulogy for the planet also, in a way, about the idea that we've all ended up in a data farm somewhere. And then the last thing I wanted to show you a little bit of is I also turned this thermal camera on myself and my husband. And this is somewhat in keeping with work I've been doing for a long time, which is that when I turned 50 and he turned 62, I started photographing us together. And taking images is basically in bed together, etc. Now I just lost our folder. Oh, good heavens. I am so sorry. I'm having one of those tech things that's not so good. I feel like I called it lunch with you. But the idea was that I would follow over the course of time our decay while we were having sex, right? And now we've actually been doing this for longer than I care to admit, right? It's been a long time since we began. Maybe it's here.
Like 10 years or?
And most of these have been very high resolution images of us.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little bit different in that, let's start here. It's actually, I thought I had rehearsed this a little bit, but obviously I did a bad job. So this is very different because this also results in these kind of painterly images. So they're very, very different in that way than the original set of images, which has been ongoing really since, when did we start? 2000 something, right? 2003 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And is still ongoing. So this is the kind of image that the thermal camera produced of our sexual escapades. And with these, I only have still images. There are no video images of this. So here again, it's all about body heat.
Yeah, and you have, I mean,
and that gives you kind of a sampling of what these are like. You know, probably I'll collect maybe, 20 images or something like that in the end and make them into some kind of portfolio. The next grouping of, it's called Love in the Ruins, Sex Over 50.
Which, yeah, which isn't it, I think.
Although now we're over 60.
Yeah, I mean, very relevant and important topic to sort of talk. I mean, this, it's not just this country, but, society at large is very bad at talking about intimacy beyond a certain, body packaging age range.
Absolutely.
And so, but I think it's interesting that you have this sort of range of topics where, you're talking about the kind of like speculative future, like disembodied future, and this kind of theoretical space. But then there's something so intimate about, just you and your husband over this time. It's I find it interesting to see the interaction of these very drastically different concepts with similar materials with this heat camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I do wonder, I'm like, how does that change? How does the content shift? Or how do my feelings shift as I'm looking at this image versus that image?
Are you talking about like looking at me alone versus us together, or thinking about the explicit, more high resolution images, say, of us versus?
Well, I'm just thinking about like the content, like how intimacy seen through this infrared camera, how that makes it a little, on one hand, it distances, it distances the experience, but it's still poetic and kind of painterly, like you were saying. So, but it does kind of make the age a little bit more ambiguous. I'm just thinking out loud.
No, I hear what you're saying. As you're talking, I was going to pull up really quickly some images of the way the series looks otherwise, right? So these are images, these are installation images, but as you can see, these are really, really different.
Yeah, right? They are. They're so different.
They're high resolution images of our bodies together, some having sex and some embracing, but some literally having sex also. This was an earlier grouping in another exhibition. So there is a really big difference between what's happening in those thermal images and these. And I haven't given up on this either. It's just that once the thermal camera was there, I thought, it's also about the metaphor of body heat and being warm. And also as you start thinking more and more about your mortality, which you do not only because of aging, but this COVID thing, the one thing that happens right away when someone dies is their body starts losing heat, right, till it's cold. And so that is also kind of in there implicitly in those images. But this is obviously a very different kind of exploration of the subject matter.
Yeah, and these are kind of wonderful in their explicitness.
Right.
Which has like a, just a different quality, like a different emphasis, I suppose, and celebration. I mean, these are very celebratory images to me.
I feel like they are too.
Yeah, they're great. They're great.
And at some point we'll do another round of this. It's interesting too, because now enough time has gone by that there's a really marked difference between the images on the right and the left in terms of our age. You can see the body changing and the body kind of, I don't want to say disintegrating. That's kind of sad, but I'm conscious of it. You get up in the morning and it's like you realize that your body really looks older than it did not that long ago. And it really accelerates at a certain age. That's the other thing, that somehow it just seems suddenly to be like a runaway train. But and actually, that's one interesting thing about the thermal images is there it's not as clear,
right?
Because you're reading the heat coming off our bodies and not the surface of the skin.
No, and in some ways it's like it does speak to the fact that like this heat is kind of eternal, like that's something that's there until the last moment. So I think that's kind of a beautiful sentiment as well. But even though it's kind of, again, in its very distance mediated form.
Yeah.
But
and also that we've managed to sort of keep doing this project over such a long period of time. That it hasn't, it feels like it's still relevant as an ongoing thing to do. And I'm more engaged with doing that than I have been with the self-portraits that, at least at the moment, that I've done. Although I'm thinking about doing something in the studio again. I'd like to take one of the big mirrors I have and break it and do some work with that, with a shattered mirror. And that's something I've wanted to do for a while. And again, I don't know how it'll work. It might turn out to be a total cliche and something that doesn't function. I don't know. I guess a lot will depend on how the images come out, whether it's a worthy enterprise or not. But it's been in the back of my mind for a long time.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, like those projects, I think that it does seem like you're open to a very collaborative kind of spirit with technology or with your materials, like you kind of allow for the medium itself to kind of like present options, and then you can kind of work with that. So that, I mean, I think your openness to material, to sort of like material exploration is really apparent and like kind of amazing to see these, you know, the way you collaborate with your tools. So that's really, yeah, it's a really good part of your practice.
Thank you. It's actually been a very exciting year. I've learned a lot of new things. And in fact, I'm just about to launch a 3D gallery that's going to be kind of an exhibition of some of the work, which I'm very excited about. And it's going to be on the platform Mozilla Hubs. And so what ends up happening is it's low resolution. That's the only thing. But you basically can, it's a social networking space. So you can meet other people there and walk through the gallery and talk to each other.
I was just going to say, you know, as we're, you know, we sort of have another few minutes, but, you know, where can people find out more about your projects and what's coming up for you and those types of things? So what did you say, Zilla, is that a website?
Well, it's what, if you look at the screen right now, right, this thing that says 3D galleries is going to be launched in the next week. And in fact, had it been ready, I would have had us had lunch in there. It would have been really fun to do.
That's so cool. Maybe we should do a follow-up.
You know what?
Like we
could. Yeah. We could, because this is going to be, I think, a really fun thing. And you would have an avatar and I would have an avatar and we would wander around inside the space. So it's going to be reachable through my website, which is just susansilas.com. But also it will, I'm going to do a big mailer. So anyone on my mailing list will get a mailer about it and links to all of the ways to enter the space. People will have to do a little bit of a learning curve. It's not a huge one in terms of how to navigate in there. Some people get frustrated in the beginning, but once you get it down, it's actually very easy to do.
Excellent.
And it's a kind of fun thing, and it's a way to have a studio visit, exactly what we're doing now, in a completely different way. And the reason that I went ahead and did it was because I felt like it would be much more fun in a way than the Zoom that we've gotten used to, and still a way to see the work, although you're not seeing super high resolution imagery. For that, you would have to come back to the website and look at things there. But it's really kind of fun. You know, like you build a whole architecture. It's like, looks like this snazzy gallery, and you get to wander around and talk about the work. And so that's really fun. And Eulogy, the video that we saw a little bit of, is actually going to be in a couple things coming up. It's in a new media biennial in, I don't know how you pronounce it honestly, Wrocław. I don't know exactly what that is, Poland, and at a place called WRO, and I'm very pleased that it's included in that. And it's also going to be screened at the release of a zine called Cool Tea. I think it's called Cool Tea Zine, but they're called Cool Tea Salon. And it's a group of people, artists in Sofia, Bulgaria, and London, who have a zine. And I had submitted something, just an image for their zine that seemed appropriate. And they took the initiative to go onto my website and said they would so much rather show these videos during the launch. So they'll show Eulogy and they'll show one other motion capture at this launch, you know, but this is a couple of months away still.
That's great.
But both of those things are kind of nice. So the motion captures are getting out in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, especially, you know, pandemic time, I've seen that the projects that have done really well are things like, you know, zine like fairs or artist collectives or digital, like people are really, it is an interesting point at this moment where we can all connect with each other, and it's like, you know, there's maybe different types of opportunities available.
I think there are, and I've actually really enjoyed like eFlux has done made a lot of videos available by artists, and I've actually really, really enjoyed that. I also wonder a little bit whether after this is over, hoping that it's sometime soon and that we can go back to something that approaches normal, whether people are going to long for objects and kind of run away from media for a while, or whether they'll just be integrated together. It's really hard to know. I mean, I feel such a longing to go to some place like the Met. And the one time I went before Thanksgiving, I actually felt it was way too crowded there. Yeah. MoMA was good. MoMA was actually, I thought, very well controlled. Yeah. But I felt like the Met was not, you know, and maybe I just went on the wrong day. I don't know what happened. I felt like they let hordes of people in at the same time. And
it's true. It's true. Our tolerance also for crowds of people may have decreased.
Yeah. I mean, I think once mostly people are vaccinated, we'll feel more comfortable. I do.
I'm hoping so, but I know that for myself too, like I'm wary if there's 4 people in a room or something.
Yeah,
all of a sudden,
I agree. We've
all signals.
Our alarm bells go off. I mean, I guess because I'm an oldster, I'm lucky in the sense that I qualified to get vaccinated. And I'm very, you know, delighted by that, because I feel like it's also going to make it easier for me to travel to the studio, because I've been coming way less often since Thanksgiving, because I've been commuting by, you know, Uber, and it's expensive.
It's gotten incredible.
It's really expensive. And so, you know, I feel like once I have the second vaccine, I'll, with a mask, obviously, but I'll be able to get on the train.
Yes.
And I won't feel as nervous. And I was using the train for a bit, but it got progressively more and more crowded. By November, it felt already kind of uncomfortable to me. And then I knew Thanksgiving was going to create a horrible disaster, and I stopped going to the train.
No, these are like, you know, the considerations that we've all had to, these are the factors that we've all had to make. And it feels like it's a risk every time you leave your house, but.
No, you feel nervous. I just realized that I should have had you in the center of my screen so that I looked like I was looking at you instead of like off to the far end of the universe.
Totally fine.
So obviously my Zoom skills are pathetic.
No worries. So, but yeah, so I just want to also, you know, just make sure that if anybody wants to find out more about your work, they should just head to susansilas.com.
I think that's the best way.
Sign up for your mailing list, which I assume you have a sign up somewhere.
No, that I don't. That's a very smart thing you just said.
You should have a mailing list sign up. I have mine.
You know, that's interesting. And how is yours set up? What do you just have a thing or a?
I have like a contact page where people can just put their email address and send it to me.
Oh, interesting. Because I have a contact page too with my email, so people can contact me, but I never really thought about it in terms of, you know, adding to the email list. I really should do something about that.
It's a very smart thing to do.
Okay, I'm gonna check yours out.
I mean, not that I have so many people signing up, but it's, you know, it's
if somebody wants to know, for sure. Like, you know,
also,
obviously,
Susan, you're on Instagram, and Susan actually did one of our Instagram takeovers. So what's your handle on Instagram?
It's just at Susan Silas. So that's really easy.
Nice and easy. Okay, that's great. Well, I think that we should wrap up the conversation now, just so this file
doesn't get too long. Yeah.
But I think that a follow-up conversation in your 3D gallery, once that's ready, would be fantastic. So
I would love to do that. I think it would be really fun. And I think people would enjoy it. It's not as typical a way to look at work.
I think so too.
All right, wonderful. I really look forward to it. I look forward to seeing you up there, because my second shot is on the 16th, so I'm almost there.
Congratulations. Mine is on the 14th, so.
Oh, so right there. Right in sync.
Right in sync.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.